Good evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for February 18, 2020. This meeting is now called to order. Invocation will be led by Commissioner Rice. Please rise. As able.
Pray with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you gave us. Thank you for allowing us to live in the city of Longview. Bless our meeting tonight and all that participate as we both all make good decisions for the further growth of our great city. We ask you to bless us, each and every one, as we go home tonight, and bless us every day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The chair calls for a motion to approve the minutes from our January 21st meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have rearranged our agenda just a little bit to where we have moved citizen comment to the top of the agenda. Now, I have speaker cards from those that are here to speak in behalf of a particular agenda item. This is anyone that has a comment they'd like to make outside of that. Is there anybody in our general audience that would like to make a citizen's comment at this time?
I'm Frank Sinsky. I'm here to speak on the regular agenda meeting.
Yes, sir. I have your card.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Hearing no one wanting to give any miscellaneous citizen comments, we'll move forward with the order of the business for this evening. We have we have 3 consent agenda items and 1 regular agenda item. The items on the consent agenda are plats that meet the requirements of the City of Longview subdivision ordinance. These items will be approved with 1 vote unless any member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, any member of the public, or the applicant would like an item removed from consent and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Under the regular agenda, the purpose of this meeting is to hear all pertinent testimony of those in support of and in opposition to the application before the board. Tonight is the first of 2 public hearings required to approve a change in zoning. The board also considers plats. The procedure for the public hearing items on the regular agenda tonight will be: the public hearing will be opened and testimony will be heard in the following order. First, the applicant, then the staff, city staff, and then the general public. That would include those that are in opposition and those that are in support of the request. If you're part of a large group with a common interest, we ask that you appoint a spokesperson rather than have each individual restate the same information. When addressing the board, please begin by stating your name and address. Try to limit your comments to 5 minutes. When all sides have spoken, the public hearing on the matter will be closed and no further public discussion will be entertained. After each public hearing is closed, the board will vote on the request. Zoning requests and the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation will go forward to the second public hearing, which will be conducted by the City Council on March 12, 2020. Thank you. We have 3 consent agenda items. Having had no request to move those to regular agenda, the chair calls for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Consent agenda items pass. Moving to regular agenda, Angela, would you please tell us about that one?
Yes, ma'am. This is a public hearing will be held to consider application PD 20-02 filed by Mitch Reed to rezone approximately 5.2835 acres of abstract 113 J. Jackson Survey, Tract 31, Section 1 from Single Family Dwelling District, SF2, to plan development to allow for a church to have additional head-in parking in the right-of-way located at 2400 McCann Road.
Thank you, Angela. Is the applicant or the applicant's representative here? If so, please come to the microphone and introduce yourself, give us your address, and tell us about your project.
Madam Chairperson, members of the Commission, my name is Kenny Hawthorne. I'm representing 2400 McCann Road. I live in White Oak, but I'm a member of this church. And so we are looking to invest and to we're in the process of doing some discovery to try to figure out what we want to do. And so part of that was to understand the processes, and one of the processes to come before the commission with, with our plans as they currently exist. So those plans, as you show on the board, are for us to try to reorient the front of the church, take in a piece of it to enlarge it as the entryway, build handicap accessible access at the front door of the church, and then also to address some parking on the, what is that, the east side? Is that where it is?
The west side.
West side. An area that currently involves a lot of parallel parking and unsafe conditions where a lot of people will parallel park in that space during high peak activity. We have a lot of children on that site that play in that playground, and that creates an environment where they're running in and across that to the parking on the other side of the street. So for both safety reasons and for the purposes of our planned growth in the church, we had asked for the ability to put parking on our property in that space. So it's wholly within our property line that we're building that. Angela, am I covering that well enough?
Yes, so the parking is actually, it's on their property, but it's also in the right-of-way, and so that's the whole reason for this plan development, is it's in the right-of-way of Hampton Court. As you can see here, it mirrors this median. Part of the parking spaces are on their property, and then part of it is in the right-of-way.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sort of crosses the right-of-way to get to our property, if you will.
Do the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Is that a sidewalk that I'm seeing up there? That is going to be on the front side of that?
Yes, that would be a sidewalk bringing the people up to the church, right?
So they don't have to get into the street and walk to the
Right.
church?
I mean, if there's no parking there now, so everybody parks in the median.
Mm-hmm.
So, and both sides, our church and the church is very active across the street, so there'll be a lot of activity there. And so in evenings and when all of that's going on, all of those have to cross the street to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like a way to make accessibility to the front of the church on our property. So we went to the city and said, can we consider such an idea? And then they helped us to understand what the method for doing that would be. So this creates a planned development zone for the church, which really sort of protects it from doing anything but being a church at this point. I mean, that's what it's going to be able to be. It's what it's going to be. This is our investment in that church to make sure that we're there, for the perpetuity, so to speak.
Okay. Any questions, any further questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir. Staff?
Thank you. The applicant is requesting a rezone from Single Family 2 to Planned Development. This would allow for Longview Christian Church to have some additional head-in parking in the right-of-way located on Hampton Court. The intent of a plan development is to permit a greater flexibility in development regulations to allow for more creative approach in design. The zoning ordinance currently and the streets and sidewalks ordinance does not allow head-in parking in the right-of-way. Therefore, staff actually made the recommendation to do a plan development for this site. So as Mr. Hawthorne stated, the church did meet with the city to discuss a small renovation to the entryway of the church located on Hampton Court, along with a driveway for loading and unloading, and a future parking lot, and then the new head-in parking along Hampton Court. As I stated earlier, the head-in parking spaces along Hampton Court will mirror the existing parking spaces that are out there in the median. After evaluation with our engineering division and a site visit, staff recommended the plan development as a proper approach to allow for this head-in parking spaces. The church will construct the parking spaces, the head-in parking spaces, and will maintain those spaces, those head-in parking spaces. Staff finds that the proposed zoning change is consistent with the surrounding uses. Staff recommends approval of this request with the stipulation that the property owner will maintain the new head-in parking spaces in the right-of-way located on the south side of Hampton Court. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions of staff?
I also do want to reiterate that this is for a church use only. So the uses are staying the same, it's just the head-in parking.
Good point. All right, we have no questions at this time, so the public hearing is open for the general public, those that would like to speak in support or in opposition of this request. I have a number of cards. Mr. Supersinski, did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Won't you?
I will speak in opposition.
Would you come to the microphone, please, and give us your name and address and give us your comments? Thank you.
My name is Frank Supersinski. I live at 109 Village Green Drive, which is the Village in the Park addition. First of all, and I'm also the president of the Homeowners Association that is in that subdivision. Mm-hmm. First of all, the church isn't particularly asking for this. This is a staff recommendation. And as also an attorney and understanding the zoning laws, they're not just asking for the parking addition, they're asking for their entire property to be rezoned. Now, another thing I do not understand is why all of a sudden this entire property has to be rezoned when you go out there and look, you see that there's also parking in that street on that other side. And even if it is private property, there's parking on private property. So I don't understand the logic of staff to say that the entire zoning of that area has to be changed from single family to allow that miniature parking in there. Now the other point is that if this is entirely private land, parking is done on private land all the time. There's nothing to stop the church on their own volition to taking more of their property either in the front or on the side, going across that sidewalk and building that parking without changing the zoning. Now let's talk about also why there is a real concern about this. We appreciate their statements of saying that they want to stay there. We want them to stay there. They're good neighbors. But also, this council got to remember, about 3.5 years ago, they wanted to put a big Walmart on that property to completely change the entire development of that area. We have exclusive single-family developments to the right, to the left across, and to the south of that property. We are very much concerned about changing the entire property here, and I just got asking the representative, and it's shown on this map, and it states in the deal that they're going to change the entire property from single family to whatever they want to do with it. And so as we know, and as this zoning commission knows, and as the city council knows, that once you change zoning, and you get away from that single family too, these folks can do anything they want with that property and put anything in there from a commercial standpoint. So we're very much concerned about this. And so I basically, number one, and the other thing that concerns us about it, and I appreciate the representative of the church stating it, as which he told us in the meeting last night, they don't know for sure what they want to do with that property. They don't understand how they want to develop it. So we have no assurances whatsoever that this is just going to be limited to parking. Now, another thing that came up, and again, they have two services. And they admitted that on their 11:30 service, their parking capacity is only about 70% full. We didn't get the discussion about what their earlier capacity was. But the point is, they have plenty of space on their own land to develop any parking that they want to on their own land without changing that zoning. And so we just don't believe, if this was a staff recommendation, we believe it's overreaching to destroy the zoning that has been passed in there for years. And basically, we want the church to prosper, we want the church to grow, but we also want our neighborhood protected. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Supersinski. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I have speaker cards for, shall I call them out? Yes, sir. Mike Shelton?
Yes, Mike Skelton. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. My name is Mike Skelton. I'm the lead minister at Longview Christian Church located at 2400 McCann Road. And I'm personally excited about this potential opportunity to increase the usability of our property by adding more parking. We are a very active congregation. We are a very young congregation. And so as we have increased our level of activity and increased the growth amongst young families, over the past 3.5 years, the evolution of Longview Christian Churches is such where we have stuff going on. And a lot of what is going on is largely housed in our community building, which is the large rectangle you see here on the left side. And most of what happens there is things with families. And so we want to make sure our families, as they come to things, midweek, are parking closer with their, with their 3 and 4 kids and things like that, and where they have the easiest access possible. And doing that in conjunction with the recommendation of the staff is to make sure that we can, utilize this site long term. Many churches are leaving the, localized Longview area, buying properties, north of town, outside of the city limits, things like that. We want to be present. We want to utilize the acreage that we have there at 2400 McCann Road. We see it as an important spot in the city, and we want to be good neighbors, which is, precisely why we have approached the city to initiate this process and to get the great recommendation from the staff in order to stay there long term. As far as our future hopes, that's what we want to do. It's all going to be located there at 2400 McCann Road. We like our site, we like our neighbors, we like what we can offer to our community. We have, as far as future plans, they'll be dictated by the needs of the church. If it's more parking in the future, it'll be more parking in the future. If it's, more space there, it'll be more space there. But the great thing about, as what a planned development has been described to us, it's opening a door of a continued relationship with staff to help us through this process and to get good recommendations from very knowledgeable people on how to utilize this space. Going the route of a planned development is essentially developing a partnership with the city, and that's truly how we see it because, again, we want to be good neighbors. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Anyone else? David Jennings, you want to?
My name's David Jennings. I live at 103 Village Green. The west end of this property along McCann there, last time when this Walmart thing came up, that was a separate lot, zoned for commercial or whatever. They're facing McCann Road. Okay. I thought all this got hammered out whenever they did the zoning when the Walmart got put down. But I don't trust them about that. I think they'll sell it, and with this new zoning, then our planned development can be anything. And on the south side of the property here, it may be a new church, but for 15 years, they blow all of their leaves there, and the north wind blows them into our neighborhood and against our fence. And we have paid to haul that, picked up, hauled off for years. They're not very good neighbors, and I do not trust them on this. Leave it residential, please. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
I would
Jennings.
like to restate You know, a planned development is actually a very stringent type of zoning. It will only allow for a church use only. No other uses can be allowed in a planned development, this type of planned development. Staff will have a lot of oversight, and then it will be written into the ordinance where the church is the only allowed use at this site for this planned development. You know, planned developments allow for a little bit of flexibility with the parking in the right-of-way. However, there is a lot of oversight from city staff. Any additional buildings will require an amendment to the planned development. You will be re-notified at that time, and there will be 2 public hearings. So the use is not changing at all. The use will only be a church use. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It's actually more restrictive than what they have now.
Yes.
Because right now they could do anything under the single-family zoning, which is, there's a handful of things that are allowed beyond just single-family churches and things. But they could build whatever buildings, whatever parking they want. Under the planned development, it requires a public process, which is 2 public hearings and ultimately a council vote. So when he talks about it being a true partnership, that's where that comes into play.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as a point of order, I don't see anything they are proposing to do that will require a zoning change. There's
Absolutely.
nothing going vertical. There's nothing changing on their footprint.
So it's not,
If they
so,
wanted the parking and the handicap accessibility, which is a big deal, I'm telling you, I don't see that we have to rezone anything.
so as Angela stated, head-in parking is not allowed by ordinance. So if it's not allowed by ordinance, the only methods to allow it is either to change the ordinance, to go through the variance process, or a planned development that allows flexibility. In this case, a variance is really not an appropriate application because it's in violation of 2 separate portions of city code, streets and sidewalks, as well as the zoning ordinance. An ordinance change is not appropriate either because that's blanket. That would have implications all over the city. The planned development is the best method to have a public process and to let city council authorize that waiver, because this particular situation, you do have parking in the right-of-way. You do have head-in parking off of the street. So it's a very unique situation that was created. And the uniqueness is the city doesn't want to accept responsibility of that parking in the street for city maintenance. So this planned development is the way to get that on the record and to allow a unique development proposal, even though it's not a building proposal at this point that's the issue. They are doing a development proposal. They are increasing the square footage of their building. That's not what's triggering the planned development. It's the parking, because that is a zoning function.
If you go out there right now and you turn in, you have hidden parking to the left?
Yeah, go to the aerial. And so, you know, that area, I'm sure there's others here that can speak about the history of that area, but I believe, was it in the 60s or 70s that Hampton Court, that section of Hampton Court, City Council accepted that as a dedication after it was already built. So I'm assuming that parking and everything was already there. It was private, and the council took over that maintenance and of the right-of-way and the parking. So it is a very unique situation because the only areas that head-in parking is allowed is in our downtown area. We don't allow that anywhere else. But given the situation here and the fact that they wanted to expand upon that, the planned development method is the best public process to allow that.
So that is a public street.
Correct.
Correct. And the parking that is currently happening in the median is on that public street.
Correct.
We deviated the
our forefathers deviated this because they accepted the property as built
Correct.
with head-on.
Yes, sir.
So we broke the rules before the rules were written, I guess, is what you're trying to say.
Yep.
Okay, and as you pull in, there is no parking to the right.
Correct.
That's correct.
All right, can we move forward? All right. Do we have any other speakers? I have a Mr. Burden, Mrs. Burden, Mr. Burden.
My name is Forrest Burton. I live at 106 Village Green. Mr. Superskinsky pretty well covered the items that I was going to ask about, but particularly, you know, why, if they want to rezone just the parking problem, rezoning, you know, the 5 acres property. That was one of my main concerns. One other concern I've got is that what is the definition for planned parking? How do you define planned development?
So.
Can staff address that, please?
Yes, we can. As I stated earlier, planned developments, the intent of planned developments, there's no finite definition, but it is to permit a greater flexibility in development regulations. It doesn't typically fit our cookie cutter mold of single family 2 or whatever zoning districts we have, or retail, or, you know, whatever the zoning categories that we have. Usually planned developments, they don't fit that mold, so this parking that's in the right of way, we don't allow it. It doesn't fit in any current zoning ordinance that we have, or category, zoning district. And so you do a planned development. Every planned development is different. Some planned developments allow for certain uses. This one is restricted to only a church use. That will be written in the ordinance, as well as it's been written in the staff reports and presented to Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. We had a planned development that was approved by City Council last week that permitted, it was an event center that permitted an event center use, a church use, and office use only with daycare. So it's a planned development is it allows for flexibility, but it also is fairly stringent.
Under our current zoning rules dictate building setbacks, parking minimums, parking design, landscape minimums. It creates the platform on how to develop. And so if there's areas that you can't fit but are still within accepted practice, that's where the planned development comes in, and it allows you to basically draw your own standards. So it's a way to work around the standards that are adopted, but still within the overall plan for the city. So it's not a waiver, it's just a way of looking at things different based on the unique characteristics that are site specific. Because it's an existing developed site, we're kind of going backwards, but what it would do is it provides additional oversight, because currently under that zoning, they could go out there and build within that development box, within their setbacks and everything. But in the future, if they want to do anything out there, they have to come through and get approval through City Council, which is a public process with 2 public hearings. So it's even more stringent than what they have to follow today.
But it also, just to and wrap up, it doesn't allow for the flexibility of uses. And so it does have to comply with your current uses that are around there, and then the future land use map. So they couldn't do a planned development to allow for a Walmart, like was stated earlier in the statements. The planned development would not allow for that. That would be spot zoning. And so our planned development is very stringent about that.
Okay. The other thing that bothers me is that the 22 spaces that they want to pull in and park, half of the front part of the car is on private property. The back part of the car is on the right-of-way. Okay, why wouldn't the church, not having to go about this rezoning, why couldn't they give us 10 more feet south so that the whole car could be on private property, and there wouldn't be any need at all to have the city to try to rezone some parking just because a car is sticking out on the right-of-way. You know, why that, you know, I just considered that if they give us, 10 more feet, they can pull the whole car in there. If they don't want to do that, the west building that he showed, why can't they put an entrance off of, what's the name of that court? Hampton Court.
Hampton Court.
Why can't they give us an entrance off of Hampton Court along the west side of that building and park the cars in right up against the building? They're just giving up 20 feet is all they're doing. Other than that, like Mr. Supersinski said, they've got a bunch of property on the east end that's this parking. Can't they add, 22 spaces over there, which doesn't, I don't guess, requires rezoning, it's on private property. So, I just wondered, why are they just dead certain, to put this on that particular spot and then having to go through rezoning? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Would anyone?
Just one question, just clarification. Angela, are you
You'll need to, yeah.
are you confirming then that comment that half the cars sitting in the right of way?
So, let me go back to the site plan. Half of the parking spaces are in the city right-of-way. So city right-of-way, I think people get sometimes a little confused. The back of the curb to your property line, that is city right-of-way. Typically, city utilities are located in there, water and sewer services. In this case, there are actually no city utilities in that right-of-way. But yes, sir, I am confirming how it appears, based on this site plan, half the parking spaces are in the right-of-way and half of them are on private property.
And the road itself, I mean, the implication seems like the car's sitting out in the road. I want to clarify that.
Yes, the spaces will not actually be sitting in the road. The spaces actually are longer than your typical normal parking spaces, and so they will be pulled pretty far off the road. They will, and if y'all went to the neighborhood meeting last night, they will mimic those parking spaces that are actually already in the median, and those spaces are very long. I saw a lot of F-250s parked in those spaces, and they had lots of space left.
And to clarify another point, even if the parking space, the whole parking space was on private property, it's still considered head-in parking if they have to back directly into the right-of-way. So even if they added 10 feet and just scooted everything up, in order for it to not be head-in parking, they would have to have all the parking and all the drive aisle and maneuvering area would have to be outside of the roadway. So it would actually be, you would have at least another 10, you would basically have a driveway parallel to the road that they would back into and drive out of. If that makes sense.
I know that sounds stupid, but I gotta ask that question. I pull in my driveway every day.
Correct.
607 Hampshire, you can come visit. Is it illegal for me to park my car in the driveway? It's zoned the same as this zoning, and I pull straight in, and I back out on the street every day. Am I illegal every day?
Yes. It's allowed
Is
for
everybody in
residential.
every neighborhood in Longview, Texas illegal when they back out of the driveway every day? I'm asking.
No, I thought you said, are you legal? Yes, you're legal.
Okay, but what is the stated difference if this is zoned?
Commercial parking.
No, this is single family listed.
Sure. So zoning and use are two different things. It is zoned for residential use. Churches are by nature considered a commercial type operation when you're talking about land use, building codes, fire codes, parking regulations. So parking regulations are set by the use, not the zoning. So in a parking lot scenario where it's not single family use, you cannot have the head-in parking.
Just want to clarify.
Well, a point of order, why do we have two zonings on one piece of property?
We don't.
Yes, we do. It's the subject parcel is SF2 and MF2.
Yeah, there's a little sliver.
Go to the aerial.
I think it's just this portion right here.
Yeah, and it may be I think that's part of a drainage area that probably was part of the original subdivision to the east there. So it had that single-family zoning category of
The future
Hampton
use
Court.
land map, page 26 is the question. It shows two distinct tracts of land. It shows an MDR, and then it shows the hatch marks, but it shows a street or an easement or something that's coming north-south.
That's not a street, that's, that originally was actually, I think, retail, and that area was redesignated through Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council as MDR, medium density residential. It was retail before. It was because of that Walmart situation that it was requested that the future land use map be amended from retail to MDR, medium density residential.
But yet it's still, is this just an older version and it's still listed there?
Well, it's MDR now, so it was retail, which is in the purple before. Yes.
Yeah, and that white space between the zoning, or the different future land use zones, that doesn't mean anything. That's just a pictorial separation between the boundaries there. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
Because if you remember, future land use maps are not so specific that it is based on a property line. It's more about land use of an area, so it's not as specific as zoning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions of Mr. Hawthorne while he's at the mic? Okay. Doty, oh, yes, Mr. Supersinski?
About 1 minute more. So from a logic standpoint, the original zoning or single family was just exactly that, to protect single family areas. But what bothers me was the statement that was made, well, now there's not going to be any parking on the street. It's just going to be on the private land. That was the statement that was made just a while ago. So if there's only going to be parking on private land, we shouldn't be here at all.
That statement was made.
That was the statement that was made. They said, no, this is not going back, you're not going to have any parking out in that street. So if you're not having any parking in that street, it's going to be big enough so that it's strictly on their land. We shouldn't be here at all. Thank you.
Who made this statement?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think when we said on-street
on-street,
parking,
yeah. It's not in the thoroughfare, but it is still that parking is still in the right-of-way. So it is from the back of the curb to the property line, there is parking spaces still in there. It's just not in the travel lanes. Yeah.
I have a card for Jody Borden. Borden, excuse me.
I'm Dodie Borden, and I live at 112 Village Green Drive. And I'm not just real versed on all the comes and goings. First of all, I'd like to know who is the staff that we keep talking about? Is this a
Staff, the staff here. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. City staff, yes, ma'am. City
in
staff.
The City Development
Yeah.
Department.
Development Services, Planning and Zoning, yes, ma'am.
And I don't know how to put this to you, but if the staff has done all this research and stuff, at what point did the church get involved? And then finally, the residents around. Should we have not been from the ground going so we could have a learned or at least know what we're facing? And I'll tell you something else that bothers me. We have in fact, I can tell you, without question, we have the best subdivision group of houses in Longview. We have always been nice and kind to our neighbors. That's the churches, and they have been nice and kind to us. However, why would you need extra stuff when you've got 5.2 acres of your own stuff that you could work on. I mean, 5.2 acres, that's, if you're mowing grass, that's a big plot of land. So I'm just wondering why you can't work with what you've got. Why do you have to change for everybody else when you already have what you need? Why can't you develop what you have? I mean, it looks to me like you've been blessed plenty with the prime place you are, number one. And number two, I think you've been blessed to have extra acreage that you could use. Anyway, I'm not fussing about anything. I want to protect the best little street in Longview, Texas. And I want the things done that will best help us. Not any of us are real young chickens, but we, as young as we are, we take care of our own. And I think it would be good if these younger people would take care of their own. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burden.
And I'll just kind of talk about how this project started off. So the church approached the city of Longview with their development plans and proposals in a pre-development meeting so that they could see what processes they would have to go through, whether it be development permits, building permits, site plans, and so forth. And so when they first met with us, they had kind of their project plan of what they wanted to do. As mentioned, kind of reimagining their front door, taking in the area that's kind of an awning area. And then also they wanted to do the head-in parking. And so under the current zoning, they can expand their church. What they cannot do is the head-in parking or on-street parking. And so that's really where the discussion kind of turned to is, well, in order for the church to kind of do what they need to do, because there's a lot of people that use the open spaces out there, practice fields, ball fields and stuff, and they have a lot of community activities there. And so people are already parking in the street. It's already a problem. And so they felt the best way to approach that is to make that safer while still providing a parking option that is similar to what's already out there. And provide it, as they stated, closer to their multi-purpose building. And so so what they said is, how do we do that? How do we get through that process? And so that's where staff evaluated the best approach and where we recommended the plan development as the mechanism to do that. Because what that does is it allows the neighbors to be involved. If the variance process, that's one public hearing and that's a variance board. We felt like this was really not the appropriate application of a variance, that this was something that needed to have a public process, and this is the appropriate method to get that neighbor input like she was talking, and actually had a meeting last night with the neighbors to kind of a pre-meeting to provide more information. But we felt like this was really something that had a potential, knowing the history out there and knowing how active the neighbors were, that really City Council needed to make that decision and not the Zoning Board of Adjustment, that this was going to be something that we didn't want to set the tone for other situations that are really different. It's really not a variance. It's really a unique situation because, like I stated before, we already have on-street parking there. It's a very unique situation. And this provides us the amount of oversight. The city council has the oversight with what they do with that property in the future. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It allows them to ask for something that's unique, that's already there, but also gives complete control over future development to the city council.
In those initial conversations, was there any proposal that they do it all on their own private property and not involve what we're dealing with here?
That's not what they came to us with. That's certainly something that, as we're looking at it and we're saying, look, the easiest way certainly is to do it on your property, because you can do that now by right without any public process. It's just a straight administrative process. But like I stated, through their evaluation of their site, their goals and everything that they want to do, they want to grow that church in that location. They don't exactly know what that's going to mean in the future for footprint, so they want to try to preserve as much of that as possible and kind of fix some of the problems that are there with that on-street parking that's currently happening that's a problem.
Angela, just as a point of reference, was Palisades notified?
Yes, sir.
No
Part of the
response?
Palisades,
They were
so
there
let
last
me
night.
get to the
Huh?
They
map.
were there last night.
I mean, there's nobody in the audience.
Yes, they were there at the meeting last night, but as you can see on this map, based on state law, we notify everybody within 200 feet. So people in the Palisades did get notified, and I saw some of them there at the meeting last night.
Okay, and the second thing, Michael, speak for a moment, because this is really unclear. Why would this not be a very good case for zoning board of adjustment? I mean, simply because, I mean, we're 180 degrees apart.
Sure. So the purpose of the zoning board of adjustment, they have very specific criteria that you have to apply to the cases for them to approve it. And this really doesn't meet that in terms of allowing something that's just not allowed. And because it is also in violation of the streets and sidewalks ordinance, you would also have to go to the Construction Advisory and Appeals Board. So it's two different boards, two different public processes, and to allow something that is, it's just a straight not allowed. It's not really a waiver or something that their site, is different with their site, so they need to do less landscaping or less parking. It's really something that we felt city council should have the ultimate approval on, and the plan development is the way to do that.
Once again, let's get this clear, and church members, you're hearing both of them. I think the biggest concern is the protection of the property, that it stays within the church grounds, and that it isn't an end around. I'm speaking for both sides. I know what they say, I know what they say. But in the end, do we leave a crack because we allowed a planned development instead of going through construction advisory and zoning just for these parking spaces? Do we allow a crack for the potential of the same object that everybody seems to be against? I'm in innocence.
Sure.
Nobody wanted Walmart at the corner. We all agree? Pretty much. Is this allowing a crack in the wall that we're going to leave the city council to decide instead of the people to decide? Once again, I know they're all represented, but I'm saying there was no other way. I like the construction to meet, and so what? It would have said this. We're talking about 20 spaces, and yet we've got the opportunity for the neighbors to be concerned. Everybody's concerned. Everybody wants both sides to win here, but I see conflict for when I'm retired and gone and not on this board, and you're not sitting in that chair, the next person saying, well, we had this parking spaces across the street 30 years ago, but we did this. I just want everybody to be protected because I want our city to be protected. And that's my biggest concern is I see both sides. I want the church to grow, but I also see why are we doing what we're doing when we could have just had construction advisory and P and ZB board and we're done. Am I wrong? It would have.
That's the question I ask and I'm posing, and friends, I'm gonna tell you, you've got us in an unusual position. Very unusual position. I understand everything because I make a living putting heads on beds. I know what property value is all about, okay? I respect your neighborhood. I supplied about half of it, okay? Know exactly what I'm concerned about the church and the leaves. That just caught me off guard. That the neighbors can't get to the point to where, hey, you guys are blowing leaves at us. I'm sure the church will take care of it. The second thing, and we talked about the age and we talked a lot of these things. The first thing I saw in this drawing, what was the first thing you think that anybody saw when they looked at the plat that was done by our own missionary tech team here in Longview? The first thing I saw was the ADA. Did anybody else notice that? These people are spending money on that church to get that facility accessible, which is not. That's important. But more importantly, at the end of the day, I'm with Commissioner Rice. I want everybody to be happy, and I want everybody to love living in Longview, like I do. But the differences, I think, are smaller than we're actually.
Yeah, I think there's really two issues that I've heard. One is the fact that would this open the zoning door for something down the road that is not a church or single family? No, because it is set in stone. Anybody can request a rezone property every month. So just because it's a planned development doesn't give them a leg up a month from now to come back and rezone it commercial. Doesn't change that fact at all. So no, it's not a crack in the wall, if you will. The other issue is the main issue itself. Do we want more head-in parking on the street? Whether it's on public property or private property, it doesn't matter. The head-in parking is not allowed.
But a head-in parking would be allowed on a PD?
Yes. And because the whole purpose of a planned development is you get to create your own parameters. You can create your own parking guidelines,
Okay.
Design standards. You can put stipulations as far as the uses. It doesn't allow you to change the future land use and the overall zoning, but it does allow you to kind of create your own box.
Does anyone else here wish to, I know we've got to move this on to finalize it, but does anyone in the audience wish to come to the microphone and have any more statements?
I would love to give one last word of comfort. The reason why we're going through this process is to preserve as much of that corner in its existing format. You look at all the trees that are along there, the green space, the environment that we love so much inside the city of Longview, the field right there where so many of our neighbors walk their dogs, sometimes not picking up after them, but walk their dogs there, that we just so we can be good neighbors, that we're trying to preserve this corner. The only thing we're asking for is the ability to do head-in parking along that edge right there. So we change as little as possible. I know there's a lot of fear because of what happened almost 4 years ago. I get that. We're a completely different leadership structure with a different set of values, and we are trying to preserve as much as possible with this, to keep things as close to as they are right now and still maximize the usage of this space. It is our desire to do that and to try our very best to be good neighbors. And thank you, Mr. Carpenter, for recognizing our desire to make our facility more accessible.
There it is, right there.
So,
Thank you, Pastor Shelton. Any other comments?
Again, as a lawyer, we think about the issues. The ADA issue shouldn't have anything to do with rezoning. They can sit there, tear down those columns, build their porch on their private property without any request for zoning whatsoever, and go with. So that's the other thing I didn't understand. Why would you want, if you're going to build a porch on your own private property or a circular driveway so your people could get into church more easily, which we commend, would you have to change the zoning or the parking?
Well, and to kind of answer that, so they are creating that new little circle drive there, and the way that ADA parking is, it is still considered head-in parking, because to enter and to exit the parking space, you have to you're wholly in the street section, and so that is not currently allowed in the ordinance. So that is a unique design characteristic that requires the planned development status.
Well, again, as a lawyer with federal law, the Americans with Disability Act is a federal law which preempts local laws. So local laws cannot stop the ADA. And the ADA should not be used as an excuse to sit there and say, well, we're going to do away with our own private zoning laws. Okay.
No, so that was not the point.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe, I believe there was someone else that wanted to speak. Mr. Hawthorne, did you indicate that you wanted to speak?
I'm going to say one thing was, you made the question of the question was, why don't you just do it on your own private property? honestly, when we went to the city, we thought we were. We thought it was our property that we could put parking in. We didn't know we couldn't. We just went to them and said, can we do this? Because it was wholly on our property. We were assuming that that was a possibility to do. So, and the assurance, I think that there is, again, there's an undercurrent of a concern that you tried to address, which is, are we doing an end around? Are we doing something that would cause us to put ourselves in a position to move or change the use of this property in some fashion? It was our understanding as we investigated this process that we were putting more restrictions in place for that rather than making it easier. And we had to think about that as we were kind of pursuing and looking at this. Are we going to put more restrictions in place? And certainly, we want to be the best neighbors that we can be. The last thing we thought was 22 parking spaces would be an issue. I mean, it's all a big surprise for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. Any other comments or questions from the audience? Any other questions of staff from the commissioners? This public hearing is closed. The chair calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Next item is an update.
Thank you. The plan development at Lookout Hill was approved, as well as the zoning change out there on Ambassador Row. The zoning change on Marshall at High Street, that zoning change or off of Northcutt Street, that was denied by council.
Yes. I remind you that the next public hearing on tonight's agenda item is going to be at the City Council meeting on March 12, 2020. And you are certainly invited to go and voice your concerns there as well if you wish to take that to that level. No more further business to be conducted tonight. We are adjourned.